what does conditional formatting mean to you? Of course, conditional formatting makes it easy for you to highlight certain values or make particular cells easily identifiable. That's the use of conditional formatting. It just changes the appearance of a cell or a range of cells when a condition or a criteria is made. So when we talk about a condition or a criteria, it means that there is a function that is running behind. Even if you're using an inbuilt tool, there is a criteria, there is a function that is running behind that yields either a true or a false. And once you get a true, your formatting will apply. And if you get a false, your formatting will not apply. So that's the criteria or the condition we are referring to. Conditional formatting. That's where it picks the name. There must be something that turns out to be true for the appearance of a cell or a range of cells to change. You can use conditional formatting to highlight cells that contain values that meet a certain condition. You can also highlight a cell that has no value for as long as your interest is to conditionally format that particular cell. Okay? There are several types of conditional formatting, basically two of them, and one is using the inbuilt commands. Of course, there are inbuilt commands that you have seen when you actually head over to the home tab under conditional formatting and check, you will see that we already have some predefined conditional formatting built-in commands that you can straightforward use. But again, those particular inbuilt commands are limited somehow in terms of functionality. So that's why we introduce the second logical formulas type of conditional formatting. So this logical formulas type of conditional formatting gives you the ability and flexibility to customize how you would like your formats to look like. Okay, let me check as if we have some comments here. This is Joel Ranatas. You're saying you can hear us clearly and everything seems to be fine on your side. Okay, let me just turn off some messages here so that the screen can become a little bit clear. All right, now those are the types of conditional formatting. Now, we consider that the built-in commands are a little bit basic. That's why we say today, let us do advanced logical formulas to see how we can enhance our conditional formatting. What does these two things have in common? Of course, there are things that these types of conditional formatting do in common, and one of them is conditional formatting will only apply when a logical test comes out true. So if you get a true or a non-zero number that is returned by your logical test that you write, it simply tells conditional formatting feature to apply that specific format. And the other one, conditional formatting will not apply if the logical test comes out false. And what does false mean technically? If you get a zero, it simply means the conditional format will not apply because we know that a zero in Microsoft Excel is, in other words, a false. And a false is also a zero. A true is a one or any non-zero number. You get the idea? But these are things that we shall understand when we touch our logical functions class, okay? Let's introduce ourselves to conditional formatting. Where do we find this tool? This tool is located on the Home tab, just on the Home ribbon tab. I believe everyone can locate where this is. Now, you will see the inbuilt commands, as you can see from here. We can highlight cell rules, greater than, less than, between. I believe these are the things we covered in our beginner classes. But today, we are not going to be doing this. We are heading over to formulas inside conditional formatting. We can do equals to, text that contains a date occurring, duplicate values. I believe most of us have been using conditional formatting to check for duplicate values. So you've been using an inbuilt command. We also have the top, bottom rules. We can do top 10 items, top 10%, bottom 10 items, bottom 10%, above average, below average, and we can also do more rules here. We also have our data bars. We have seen how to use these data bars when we are doing data visualization. They will become a little bit handy as you start visualizing your data. We also have color scales here. All these that I'm going through are inbuilt commands that you can use, and we have looked at how to use these functions or these inbuilt commands in our classes that we started with. But again, today, I'm just reminding everyone that we shall be mixing formulas inside conditional formatting. Icon sets here, we have several of them here, and we have used these ones, of course, to enhance our visuals. For those people who have been in our financial reporting classes, you saw last time how we used these particular icon sets to do variance analysis. So please make sure that you know or you understand these things. Now, today we are going to be dwelling a little bit more about the new rule, because when I actually click new rule, this will launch into these options here that I can explore. And what we're going to be exploring today is using a formula to determine which cells to format. Shall be writing all our formulas here, but again, I will show you the quicker way or the quicker method of writing these formulas, okay? But in case you're already a professional Excel user, please, you'll be able to construct all your logical functions in this particular area. But in case you're just beginning to, advance into conditional formatting, then I'll show you the better method that I like to use. So let me hope everyone understands where to find the conditional formatting built-in commands. Now let us understand this particular data set that is before us and, launch ourselves into conditional formatting. We have products here, we have the customers, the dates, the item cost, the number of items that were ordered, the total cost, and the grand total here. Now, one thing that we need to do here to test conditional formatting is we want to highlight all the total costs or all the values, whether we are using this column or this one, whichever we use, for those values that are greater than 60. That's a condition. We can use the built-in command to do that. And the other one, we shall test or highlight all those cells that have or that has this particular keyword here. Okay, so let us go and do that. Not highlight this entire thing. We can use one single column like so and go back to conditional formatting, greater than, then we declare the value here. Hard coding is not really a good practice, like we keep saying, but I can actually click in the cell address because this value can change in the future. In a few minutes, I want to highlight values greater than 70. In a few minutes, I will want to highlight values greater than whatever number that I may think of. So instead of hard coding in here a 60, I can do a cell reference, which is the best practice. Now, the default kind of formatting that you get is the light red field with dark red text. That's the default kind of formatting that you will get. You can choose through, as you can see, we have the yellow field, dark yellow text. We have the green field with dark green text. We have the light red field. You can go through and pick whichever format looks a little bit better for you. But again, the beauty is that you can do custom format here. You can click this one. This will launch into the format cells dialog box, and you can create a unique format of your choice from scratch. Of course, I like to use this particular background color, and then I say, okay, so I've just created my own custom format, and I can accept this one here, and there you go. You can see any value that is greater than 60 has been highlighted. So that's how we use the inbuilt conditional formatting command. Similarly, if we don't do that, we can actually Control Z, go back to conditional formatting. I like to say rules greater than, and then I can punch here the number. I will do 60. This is hard coding, which is not really a good practice. But again, feel free to toggle through all these options. Whichever you find better for you, apply that. Now, this can also work with the text. If, for example, I want to highlight inside the products, wherever there is, or inside the customers, wherever there is a keyword USA, then we can do that using the built-in command. Let me just Control Z and come back to this column here, conditional formatting, highlight say rules, and this time I will say text that contains. This is the option I can use here for an inbuilt command. Text that contains what? I can point to this cell here. So any text that contains these three letters, USA will be highlighted. How together? I can also do a custom format here and come here and change the fill color. If I don't want the predefined formats, I need to say okay. Once I do that, everywhere there is a USA, you can see all these records have been highlighted. Let me check if we have any questions that we need to take away. Yamba Drati, you're saying it is very clear now. Thank you for the comments. Keep them coming through. In case I find a question, I'll make sure I go in and give the response. All right, let us look at the top and bottom items. In the same table, we can be asked at one point, please, can you highlight for us the top 5 orders? Top 5 orders based on either the total cost or the grand total, or they can actually even use the number of items if that was the test that your manager is looking at. Highlight the top 3 orders based on the number of items ordered. That could be one condition, or highlight the top 5 orders based on the total cost or the amount that that particular transaction brought in. So how do you approach that particular question? Remember, your boss is just standing by. All right, so let's do that. We shall use the built-in command first, and then later on, I'll show you how to do the formula methods, okay? Are we together? But again, I'll just use one of the columns. Let me use the total cost. Top, bottom rules is the option. I'll go for the top. And in here, I can actually reduce this number to the number that we have here. If I want to look at the top 5 numbers, I can just do 5, removing and patching in here 5. I can use these buttons here. This one increases, this one reduces. So they want us to do top 5. I will do that. Come back here. How do I want to format the top 5 orders? I will do custom format. I can pick any color of my choice here. Let me go with the green one. And then I say, okay. Now I've highlighted the top 5 orders. Then I will say, okay. And this was just based on this column F, where there is the total cost. Now let me scroll through if I can actually look at the top items. Yes, I can see the first one is here. I can scroll through. Where's the second one? Of course, I can see another number here. Now they are not actually, because this is a huge list, relatively huge list. So if you want to actually show all of them, what I can do a simple sort here. Of course, we can do a simple sort. I can say sort from largest to smallest. That will give us the numbers, of course. You can see these top 5 records have been highlighted because we have just sorted this from largest to smallest, and there you can see the format applied and the highlight is visible. I can just Control Z to go back. Now maybe they ask you to highlight the top bottom. Of course, this is the opposite of the top 5. You still use the same approach. You can just click the column and come back here, top bottom. This time you can do bottom items, bottom 10 items. So this will give you the smallest number. I can say, give me that 5 smallest numbers in that range. That will cater for the bottom or the top bottom 5 orders. I can change the format here to anything of my choice here, and maybe use this yellow color, and there you go. So let's look through the list and see what are those bottom 5 numbers. Can I spot any here? If I can't, because this looks a little bit bigger, then I can actually do the sorting here. Do a simple sort, smallest to largest, and there you go. You can see all our top 5 numbers have been highlighted with the format that we chose. We can also do above average. We are still using the inbuilt commands. So I'll just Control Z a number of times to make sure that our formats are removed completely. Now let us try the above average. I'll come back conditional formatting, highlight say rules. I'll go for top bottom rules, and then I have an option here below average or above average. So what happens when I click here? What actually happens technically is that Excel will go through this entire column and it will compute the average. Then each number in each individual cell will be compared with that average to determine as to whether that number in each individual cell is below average. That's what happens. You can see what is happening behind. Behind there is a logical function that is running. There's a logical function formula that Excel is doing on its own without your notes. For you, just see a highlight happening here. But again, beneath the inside Excel, it's actually doing, or in the background, it's actually doing those logical tests. Sometimes you can allow Excel to do the logical test for you, or you can do the logical tests yourself. I'll pick the format here that I need to apply. I'll go custom, but feel free to use the inbuilt or the predefined formats. I like to always come here and use these colors because they're a little bit clear and they shout a little bit. Okay, but again, don't become crazy. You can use the available options here. Okay, I'll say okay one more time and then okay. So these ones will be highlighted. These are the numbers that are below average. Now, that is, I think, enough to introduce us to conditional formatting inbuilt commands. Let's move forward. What are some of the limitations of using the inbuilt functions or the inbuilt commands? Of course, you cannot highlight an entire row like this. If you're using inbuilt commands, you can see they only highlight one single cell in one go. They cannot highlight an entire record. Sometimes you may want to highlight an entire column. Sometimes you may want to highlight an entire row. You cannot achieve that using the inbuilt commands. So let us see how to do that. I'll turn over to this particular worksheet here called whole row, and we start working out formatting the entire row using a condition. Let me make sure that I've removed all the conditions that are here. I'll say clear rules and then clear from selected cells so that there is no any conditional format applied. We can start with the inbuilt example here. So we have a smaller table that we want to use where we have the sales rep, the company, and the quantities that were sold by each individual salesperson. The condition here is very simple. Highlight cells that contain Godfrey as a sales rep name. But this time, we want you to highlight the entire row. Of course, when you use the inbuilt command, you will not achieve that. But let us try. I'll highlight this entire table, conditional formatting. Then I will say, I want to highlight cell that contains or text that contains. I use the inbuilt command here, text that contains, and then I will say, please, if anything contains a cell value that will be selected in G4, get it highlighted for me. And I can pick the custom format that I want to use. Maybe I'll use green. And if I use green here, I want to change the font. You know, when the format cells dialog box opens here, you have capacity to do whatever you want in terms of numbers, in terms of the font type, font style, the borders, and the fill. But of course, to demonstrate, because of time, we tend to just use the fill color. But this is not the only kind of format you can apply. You can use all these tabs that you're seeing here. You can do numbers, you can do font, you can do border, and fill. Now that I've used this green background or fill color, I can also change the font. Maybe I can do white, if white can do a little bit better, and then I can do also bold. Let me say, okay, I can get a preview there, and there you go. I think this one looks a little bit fine, but again, it doesn't highlight the entire row. My interest is to highlight the entire row. Right, together, you can see the limitation for an inbuilt command. Now, when you actually want to highlight the entire row, it means you will need to write a custom formula. Now, let us try this particular formula. In other words, what we want to test is to go through this entire column and test, are you equal to the cell value that will be sitting in G4? Because here there is a drop down, of course. When I change this one to Moses, you can see Moses records will be highlighted. If I change this one to Raphael, you'll see Raphael's records will be highlighted. I can go back to Godfrey and so on and so forth. Now, I also want to do the same here, but this time highlight the entire row. So I'm going to be asking a question using a logical formula. I ask, are you equal to Godfrey? Of course, the answer will either be yes or no. If there is a yes, then the format will apply. If it's a no, then the format will not apply. That is the logical tests that we talked about. Our interest is to make sure that we highlight the entire. That means we have to ask this same question on each individual cell, because the format that we need should apply to all these other cells in the entire table. So how do we do that? Let's come here and do the function. I'll say equals the formula. We call this a formula or a function, either way. So I'll say, is this particular value equals to what is in this cell, G4? I'll make sure that G4 is locked. And because I'm going to be copying this formula to the sides to make sure that I can check for this particular cell address, this cell address will also look at what the results of this particular cell is giving. Together. So if we drag this particular formula to the sides, that means we shall be dragging it to the company column. It will also look back to this cell. What is your result? Are you getting a true? Then I also get a true. If you're getting a false here, then I also get a false. If you're getting a true, I get a true as well, and so on and so forth. That's how it works. Because we're going to be dragging it to the sides, I need to lock myself in this particular row so that all these other cells will check what is happening here. They will have to come back and check here, and they will replicate what this particular cell address is getting from this logical test. This simple question, are you equal to this? We either get a yes or no. But for this cell to also replicate a true, because our interest is to get it highlighted, it has to check what is happening here. So let us put a dollar symbol on our column address so that we get $I4. Then that row should be able to move down to check these other records. So this is the simple logical test that you need to write. And you can see when I highlight, I get a preview of a true. Means that as checked, Godfrey is equal to what is here. Let me hit enter key on the keyboard and drag this particular logical formula to the sides. There you go. You can see, because this particular cell has checked what is happening here, it also returned a true. This one has also looked at what is happening here, and it also returned a true. Now let us drag and see if we can get patterns of falses somewhere. I'll drag to this entire range of cells and see if I have some falses somewhere. Of course, because this record here belongs to Moses, that's why we are getting a false, because Moses is not the one that is selected here. But if I change to Moses, just as an example, you can see the patterns of truths have now shifted. Truths are now looking at Moses's records, and now where there is Godfrey, you can see you have falses. Of course, this is the easy way of writing your formulas that you're going to be using inside conditional formatting. But otherwise, you could also write it straightforward inside the other dialog box. I'll be showing you so that you pick which option works better for you. Okay. Now that I know that this particular logical question or this logical test is evaluating a true, and it's also giving us falses, I can copy this, Control C, and then come back to my entire table that I want to highlight, go to conditional formatting, new rule, and in here I will say use a formula, because I've already written the formula. Why I wrote the formula the other side is to confirm that the formula is giving me what I want. Otherwise, I would have come and constructed it from here. I will show you in just a moment. So I just paste this formula, which I have already tested, and I'm sure it works. Now what I will do is to come back to the format, change my field color that I want. I'll go green, and for the font, I'll go white and bold to make sure that I distinguish those records. I'll say okay, and there you go. I will again say okay and cross my fingers. There you go. You can see all these particular cells, or the entire record, in other words, has been highlighted together. But this is how it is actually working. Inside each individual cell, there is a formula that is running, a logical test that is running to double check, are you equal to what is selected here? Now, if I change this one to Godfrey, immediately you see the format or the highlight or the, the conditional format applies to only transactions that belong to Godfrey. I can change this one to Raphael just to test. You can see here, we are getting, with our inbuilt command, we are only highlighting from the sales rep column. But in here, we have achieved highlighting the entire row. Now, let's write this particular logical or conditional formatting formula inside the conditional formatting dialog box. I just Control Z to go back, and I'll get rid of these formulas that we wrote here. Now, I'll just simply highlight this entire range, hoping that you have now mastered what to do. You can actually avoid writing your formulas here, but it would be advisable that you always create the formulas on the sides as helper columns. Once you achieve your formula that is working fine, then you can delete these columns. They do not have any connection for as long as you have copied and pasted in the conditional formatting dialog box. These ones you can go ahead and delete them. But let's assume now you are comfortable and you know how to use conditional formatting. I'll just highlight, come back to conditional formatting, new rule, and then I'll say use a formula to determine which cells to format. So what I will do, I'll come here and say, I want to ask equals. I'm generating this entire formula from the, or constructing it here from the format value where this formula is true box here. And then I will ask, are you this particular cell address here? I'll make sure that I press F4 key on the keyboard a number of times to make sure that I only lock myself in the column. So if you don't know about cell referencing, this will become a little bit hard. But I know it is very easy if you have been attending our classes, okay? I'll ask, are you equal to what is selected here? I'll point to this cell address. But for this one, I will just leave it locked entirely, absolute, because I'm going to be, or this particular formula is going to be replicating to these other cells. So that's why we leave this one entirely locked. And we only lock ourselves in column I and leave row number 4 to move the way how it wants. Then I can say format, the fill color, green, font color, I'm doing white, and I say okay. Okay, one more time, and there you go. You can see I haven't written any formula on the sides in the helper columns, but I've achieved the same conditional formatting. We can also do below average using the built-in command like we did see a few minutes back. Let me just remove the format that might be here. I'll say conditional formatting, clear rules from the selected cells. That's how you get rid of all conditional formatting styles that might be applied to your worksheet. Highlight it one more time, conditional formatting, top or bottom rules, then I'll say below average, like so. This, of course, will give me the highlight, the default one, which I might take or I might change. I can come back to custom and I'll say the fill color will be green. And for the font, I want you white and bold. I'll say okay, and there you go. But again, this one will highlight all the numbers that are below average. And what happens is that Excel will automatically run through all these numbers, work out the average, and then compare each individual number with the average that it got in its brain to find out whether a specific number is below average. Okay? But it cannot give us that capability to highlight the entire record. Let us do it here. So what do you think we need to do here to write the formula that will check for these numbers that are below average? Of course, here, Excel has done it for us. But again, it would be better that we learn how to do it manually by our own self, okay? I'll come back here and maybe write this one. But what do you think? We can write this particular formula in a number of ways. Let me show you the first one here. I could come here and say equals. Then I ask this question. This is the logical test that I want to run. I ask, is this number here in G4? Is this number in G4? Then I press F4 key a number of times, I think 3 times, to make sure that I lock myself in G, but 4 should be able to change. G4, G5, 6, and so on and so forth. Then I'll ask, are you less than? Because we are saying below average. Are you less than? Then I ask, I open the average function. Are you less than the average of these numbers? I highlight this entire column and make sure that it is locked. And then I close this particular logical function from here. So what I've asked here is this number less than the average of this entire range? I hit enter key on the keyboard. This will tell me that it's false. It's not. This number is actually above average. That's why you're getting a false. I'll drag and populate all these other cells. And then we also drag down to see if we can get some patterns of truths somewhere. Of course, yes, we can see for Raphael, we expect this particular entire row to get highlighted. For Godfrey, this second last record, we expect the entire row to get highlighted because we can see the patterns of truths here. And we also expect Moses's second record here to get highlighted now. I'm sure that this particular formula I've written here yields exactly what I want. I'll just copy, Control C on my keyboard and X out here, highlight this entire range, conditional formatting, new rule, and then I'll say use a formula. I can just paste this formula right here. Now, after I've done that, I check or I configure my format here. I'll do green, and for the font, I'll still use my white font. I believe this one is popping up properly, and I will bold. Okay? Okay, one more time, and there you go. So that's how you can achieve the below average using the inbuilt command as well as the formula way. So what you need to learn here is to ask logical questions. What you need to master with conditional formatting is, do you know how to ask logical questions? Do you know how to construct logical function formulas? If you are good at doing that, asking logical questions, then conditional formatting will become a little bit easier for you. But let us check through the comments to see if we have any questions that we need to take away here. Let us go back here. I don't think we have any questions. Eric Galianga, you're saying, redo, please. Which particular step do we need to redo for you? Please come back and confirm. Which particular example do you want us to redo for you, Eric? I will get your feedback. But for now, let us move forward. Now, let us look at the top 3 values. We need to highlight the top 3 values here. And this is a little bit tricky. I don't know whether you can achieve this. Which particular function will you write or formula achieve the top 3 or the top 5 items to highlight the entire record, if that was the requirement from your boss? Of course, we know with the inbuilt tool, I can just highlight here, come back to conditional formatting, and then I say bottom or top rules, and then I will say top 10 items here, and I can declare that I want only 3, like so, and then I will change the format here. I'll go custom, and then I say green, and for the font, white, and it should be bold. This is the inbuilt path. So this has highlighted for us only the records that are top in this entire column or range. But again, the boss likes you to highlight the entire record so that they can actually go through and, investigate that particular transaction properly. Okay? How do you do that? Any suggestions? There are so many ways how we can do this again. How can we test the top 3 numbers by writing our own custom formula? I will come here and say equals. There are a number of ways of doing this, but let us use this first and see. I'll say equals. I want to ask this question here on this particular number. F4 key on the keyboard 3 times. I want to ask, are you greater than or equals? Are you greater than or equals? And I'll open a particular function here who can remind me. I will open the large function. What does the large function do? Returns the kth largest value in a data set. For example, the fifth largest number. So I'm just tweaking this particular logical function here. Are you greater than or equals to the largest? And I'm going to be declaring how many or which largest numbers am I talking about? 3, 5, 6, whichever number that you might think of. So I like this entire range. Excuse me. F4 key to lock it. And then I say, give me only the top 5. I put a 5 here inside the kth argument here for the large function. Close the large function from here and hit enter key on the keyboard. Of course, this will give us a true here for the first record. It is very true that 9,428 is among the top 5 numbers. Let us drag this to the sides. Of course, you'll see the patterns of trues and falses. We can confirm, yes, we have some falses here, also have some falses here, and the rest, I think, we are doing fine. We have patterns of trues. Similarly, if we don't do that, we can use, we can actually do the large function here like we did. I'll come here and do equals. I open the large function, and then I give the range, comma, and then I can declare. I can either point to this cell address to tell the large function that please return the top 5 numbers. I can use a cell address for that. Enter. And if I change this number here to maybe I want to look at the top 3, I can write a 3 here. This will change now the value. And what I only need to do here is to ask a simple question, equals. Is this number greater than or equals to the value that we have here? I'll make sure that this value is completely locked. And I also make sure that my column G is also locked. So this is another way of asking this question or constructing this logical test. I'll hit enter for this and drag to the sides, drag down as well. You will see patterns of trues and falses. So this formula should be able to do it for us. And Control C, X, highlight the entire table, conditional formatting, and I'll go new rule because this is the custom option. Use a formula to determine which cells to format, and I paste my formula here. I've already written it here, I've tested, I confirmed. I'll say the fill will be green, the font will be white, and it will also be bold. Make sure that you can do something that really makes you happy. You can choose any format. Now, if I change this one to only the top 2 items, I change like this. You can see only the top 2 have been highlighted. I can go top 3 like so. You can see now we are creating something dynamic. I can go top 4 like so. I can go top 5 like so. I believe this one is, I don't know whether it is the best. Okay, the choice is yours. Okay, let's move forward. Do I have any questions here that I need to take away here? Waiswa Paul, you're saying, kindly guide on why you were pressing the F4 key multiple times. Yes, we press F4 key multiple times to toggle through the different referencing styles that we talked about. Remember, Waiswa Paul, we have covered this in our ongoing training. We have already covered cell referencing. And the key stroke that we talked about, or the shortcut, the F4 key, toggles through, or whenever you press it, it changes the cell referencing style from relative, absolute, and mixed. So that's why we keep pressing the F4 key on our keyboard. But again, I did show you the manual way of punching in your dollar symbols to lock your column address or your row address. Let me hope, Waiswa, you have not forgotten. But thank you for the question. I have some question here. Can the insert function help in the formulation of the logical questions of formula? Yes, of course. Okwang Ambrose. The insert function that I did show you a few days back can become a little bit handy here, especially if you're a beginner, to construct your formulas properly. Remember, we are constructing these formulas on the sides. We are creating helper columns. So even if I went ahead and deleted everything that is here, let me do that. I just clear everything. Everything is gone. This particular format that we applied here will not be lost because there is no connection between what is happening here and what we wrote here. We used this to help us achieve what we wanted, and now we no longer need it. We can just delete it like I have done. But again, if I tested this, maybe I want the top 3. You can see it is still working. I want the top 2. We can see it still works because it now lives inside the conditional formatting. We only transferred the formula, and it becomes a little bit easy for you to construct within the worksheet other than constructing this formula from this dialog box. That's how I find it. But again, feel free, if you're already somehow good and you have mastered these logical functions, you can construct them from here. But there are certain situations that might become a little bit hard as we are progressing. We are just scratching the surface. When we actually move forward and get time to look at more advanced questions, then you will see that constructing your formula from here will become a little bit hard. Okay, let me just X out here and check another question here. Kimbo, what you're saying, after applying the formatting, can we put those records together or send them to another cell or range of cells? Absolutely correct. After you have applied your formatting, feel free to use your sorting and filtering knowledge to pick those particular records that hit your criteria and transfer them to completely new workbooks so that you can do more analysis on those records. Of course, we have several reasons why we do this kind of formatting. Why are you segregating these values by identifying them with a different format? That should be the question first. We don't just come here and apply conditional formatting. Though we are teaching you how to do these things, but please make sure that you use them when they are necessary. Altogether, you need to ask yourself, why do I need to do this kind of format? Do I need to extract out these records? If that is the intent, then it will actually highlight for you properly using the criteria, and then you can squeeze out those particular transactions and pick them out and use them somewhere else. Thank you for the question, Kimbo and David. Let me check. We have another person here, Shove Daniel. We press F4 key to lock. Yes, I think you are giving some clarification to our colleague who asked the question. Sometimes you may want to highlight the entire column. How do you do that? Of course, we've been highlighting the row. Now, how do we highlight a column this time? Of course, we can do the same. For example, this small data set that we have here, we want to highlight all records based on the cell value that will be sitting in B2. I have created a drop down here. When I pick Jan, March, whichever month I pick, I want this column to be highlighted like so. If there is April here, I want this entire column to be highlighted like this. If this one changes to March, I want this highlight to shift and highlight March automatically. Let's do that. I will ask the same question here. I'll ask equals. I'll ask starting from this particular Jan value. I ask a question. Are you equal to what is sitting in this cell address? But because I'm going to be replicating this formula, and that's how conditional formatting works, because this question must be asked on each individual cell which you want to highlight. The same question must turn out to be true for that format to apply. Let's do our necessary locking here. So for F4, I'll make sure that my F4, my column A can change from A, B, C, D, E, and so on and so forth. But row number 4, I want you locked. So I'll put a dollar symbol here. And this one here, I believe I want this one completely locked. So I'll do F4 key. That's the simple question. Enter. This gives us false. Why? Because we are actually pointing, we are comparing this value with what is here. Jan and here we have apple. That's why we get a false. But when we drag this particular logical test to these other columns, we shall find a true somewhere. Because here there is apple, and let me check. Do we have a false somewhere? Yes, you can see, because apple is highlighted here, it has actually found a matching value. And that's why you're seeing a true in this particular column. What this means is that if we drag this particular formula down like so, we should get this entire column showing us truths. And these truths simply mean that the format that we choose will be applied. Let us do that. I'll just copy this formula. I believe we have tested. It works. I will highlight this entire table like so, and head over to conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula to determine, and I just paste here. This just makes your life easy. Okay, format, and I'll do green. I believe this one has been shouting a little bit, bold, and then the font, I want white. But try to, apply any format of your choice. You can go crazy and do whatever you want here. I'll say okay, and say okay one more time. You can see now this particular entire column is highlighted, but if I change this one to Jan, the highlight will change. I'll change this one to April, like so. I'll change this one to May, like so. Now I'm able to highlight the entire column. I'll go Feb, and there you go. I believe these things are not that hard. Minor. Let us know these things are not hard even a single minute. Now let us move forward and look at the and all criteria. Yes, we are complicating these things as we move forward. Let me make sure that there's no any format here. I'll clear. These are workbooks that I use for these other classes. Sometimes you find the formats already there. But make sure that you get rid of those formats so that we can move forward together as we test these things. Okay. We have this particular table, sales rep, customer, and then the sales amount. We want to do a simple logical test here, format with a complex criteria, the and the logical test, or we can do the all logical test. We want to highlight all records where the sales rep equals to anything that will be selected in this range, as well as the company that will be selected here. So we want to use the and logical function to do this. I will come here and construct this question. I'll say equals. I want to point over to the sales rep column first. But again, I need the AND function here. I'll open the AND function, and we all know what the AND function dictates. Okay? I'll say AND. I supply the logical test here. The first one will be in this particular column, F4 key a number of times here to make sure that I'm locked myself into the column. Are you equals to the value that will be selected here? I lock this one completely. And the second question, remember the AND function dictates that all the logical tests that you run must evaluate a true for you to get a true. That's a condition with the AND function. So I'll also ask, are you, I'll press F4 key number of times, are you equal to this record or this value that is sitting in F5? I'll make sure that F5 is completely locked. So we have asked two questions in one. And we want all these two questions to turn out to be true for a format to happen. You should be Godfrey, and the customer or the company that you're coming from should be Amazon. If you're Godfrey and the customer is Google, then we don't want that format to work on you. I will close this and logical test and enter on the keyboard. We can drag and test if we have patterns of falses and true. Of course, for the first record, this is Godfrey and company is IBM, so they will not get highlighted. Are we together? That's why we have a false here. We know that this formula will be able to work ahead of time, even without, when you work from this particular dialog box here, sometimes you are not sure as to whether what you constructed will work. But in here, using the helper columns, you can test things, confirm, and then apply the format. Let us drag down like so. and we see whether we have patterns of truths. Yes, Godfrey, you can see this one meets the criteria or the condition is met. That's why it's gonna be highlighted. Okay, I can highlight this formula, copy it and come back to this entire small table, conditional formatting, new rule, and let us say use a formula to determine, and I paste this particular and logical formula, and our format that we used today is the green fill color, and the font we used the white font, and we had our font style bold. Okay, one more time, and there you go. Now you can see this record here has been singled out and it's highlighted based on two conditions: sales rep name Godfrey, and the customer column or the company column should equal to Amazon. If we changed from Amazon maybe to IBM, you can see this is now the record that is highlighted. I can change this one to Google. So there is no any record for Godfrey for this particular company. They have not sold to Google before, so they are not highlighted. Or I can actually shift the sales rep to Raphael. You can see Raphael now gets highlighted in our table. Again, these are just samples. You can actually use the same techniques on your real life data. Please try that. Every time you come here and learn something, try it on your real life data. Where you get difficulties, please come back to our WhatsApp group. We shall be able to support you where you fail. Okay? Let's move forward. We can also format. Let me make sure that the existing formats are out. Clear rules, clear from selected cells. You can also format a cell based on another independent cell. Are you together? Formatting cells based on a different sales value. Like for example, in this table, this is a table of invoices. We have the invoice numbers, the dates they were created, the company, the products that we sold, and the net sales. Okay. We want to highlight the net sales column based on the date that is given in B3. We want to do that. How do we write that particular logical question? Who can guess? Of course, that comes in a little bit easier. I'll come here and ask the question. I'll say equals. What we want to do is to check this particular column here for the date column. We want to check as to whether this date is either less or equals. You can set your own condition. I'm just setting this one. For example, I can say if this date is less than or equals to the date that we have here, please format the net sales appropriately, the how you want. Okay. Let's say I'll say equals, is this date value, F4 on the keyboard thrice, less than or equals to the date value that we have in B3. I'll make sure that this one is completely locked. Let me drag this one and see if I get the patterns of truths. Yes, of course. I can drag and see if this entire table can give us some falses somewhere. Of course, once you see some falses somewhere, then you know that your particular function is working fine. Now I can copy this and highlight this entire table for our invoices, conditional formatting, new rule, paste the formula here, change our format to our desired format that we have used today, green, white font bold, and then say okay, one more time, and there you go. Now we can check the net sales for all those transactions whose date of creation or invoices whose date of creation is less than or equals to the date value that we have here. Feel free to change this date value and test things out. Let me check as if we have some new comments here coming in. Who else here has a question? This is like a comment. Is it possible to include if before and like equals if and? Yes, of course. It depends on the question that you're answering. Remember, we are asking logical tests levy. It depends on the question that you're asking. If that particular question involves you opening the if function, please go ahead and do that. If it involves you writing a VLOOKUP function, please go ahead and do that. If that particular logical question that you're asking involves using the match function, please do that. If it involves using the index function, please, whichever function, for as long as the result of the function that you're writing, you expect either a true or a false. All those functions that you see in the functions library can be converted into a Boolean data type of true and false if you know how to write or to ask those questions. So let me hope, Levi, you're doing fine. In case you have a question, please, I'll be waiting for some questions here in the chat so that I can take them or answer them for you. Let's move forward with our examples. I believe we still have some few minutes left. Budget versus actuals. Now, this is something, I don't know whether this is easy for everyone. The question here is, we would like to highlight the entire row when the actuals exceeds the budget values. Any idea? Any idea from our people here? Format the entire row when actuals exceeds the budget values. We need a question here. We need to construct this logical question. And I believe it is quite easy. I'll say equals. I'll ask, is this actual? I'll make sure that I lock myself in column D. Are you greater than? I think when they say exceeds the budget value, it's greater than. Are you greater than the budget value? That is the question. I'll make sure that I also lock myself in column C by pressing F4 key 3 times or thrice. When I hit enter, I get a false, 15,000. If we compare 15,000 as the actual value with the budget value, is this one greater than this? No, they are exactly the same. So if we had said greater than or equals, then we would get a true. But here, the question is very clear. Highlight the entire row when actuals exceeds budget values. So we make sure that we get rid of the equals symbol, and then we drag this formula and check if this will give us the patterns of trues and falses. Let us double check. Yes, I can see some trues coming up here. Excuse me. Now what I can do is to copy this logical formula and highlight our table of values, conditional formatting, new rule, and then use a formula. I'll paste this one here. Format green, and for the font, we want the white one and bold. Okay? Okay, one more time, and there you go. You can see we have highlighted inside our budget all the actuals that are greater than the budget amount. Let's try the or condition here. Of course, we want to test the or, and the question here is very simple. We want to format cells based on the or criteria. We have looked at the and. But again here, we could also test the or from here. Maybe we can use this worksheet here. I'll just get rid of everything that we have here. Maybe we can say we want to highlight these records if it is either the sales rep that will be selected here or the company that will be selected here. We can test that and see. Let me get rid of the format that we have here and redo this from scratch. I'll say equals. This time I'll open the or function. So once one of these particular logical tests turns out to be true, the or function dictates that if I only find out that there is one true value inside the results of your logical test, whether you ask 100 questions, I only find one true value, then I will give you true value at the end. That will be the final result. Whereas the AND function says, if you ask 100 questions or if you write 100 logical tests, all of them should turn out to be true. You see? So they are quite different. We shall test this one here. I'll go for the sales rep and ask, are you equal to what is here? Make sure this one is completely locked. The second one, I'll test on the company. I'll ask, F4 key on the keyboard how many times here. I'll press thrice to make sure that I lock myself in column B and ask, are you equal, excuse me, just go back. Are you equal to the value that is in F5? I make sure that F5 is completely locked and enter on the keyboard. So this one for the first record, because the sales rep is Godfrey, of course, they will not get the highlight or the format. I'll actually drag this to the sides and drag this down like so. Let us check if we have some truths. Of course, we have some truths here. And let us copy this formula. We are very much sure that this one will work. Copy, highlight this entire record or table and say new rule. Use a formula. Let us paste our old logical test here. Then we say format, green, font white, and we want you bold. I say okay, and then say okay one more time. There you go. You can see now Moses has also been highlighted, even though we can see we only have sales rep name Raphael here, but because the company is Google, everyone who meets that particular criteria has been highlighted. Are we together? Even if we change this one here to maybe Godfrey, you're just adding more records. So Godfrey will be highlighted even if the company is IBM, but simply because the sales rep condition has been met. We can change this one to IBM like so. You can see all IBM cells have been highlighted, and that's how simple you can write an all logical question or logical test and use it inside your conditional formatting. Okay, let's move forward. Maybe we can rewrite this one. Maybe you can pick something from here. This is a different data set, and these are invoices that were recorded on each individual date from the companies and the products and the net sales here. We want to highlight all those invoices that equal to these two invoices that we have here. In case you are either this invoice number or this one here, we want you highlighted. So we are singling out some specific invoices that should be highlighted, okay? And this is the formula we need to write. And we can use the all function. We have seen that clue already. I can say all, and then I ask you the question, are you equal to this particular invoice number? And make sure that this one is completely locked. And also my column B should be locked. Are you equal to that invoice number? Or are you equal to this invoice number? I've asked two questions in one. So this might either give me a false or a true. Let me close the all from here and hit enter key. I get a false because this invoice number is 659,443. This is 659,444, 659,442. That's the only two invoice numbers that we need highlighted. Let us drag this formula. Maybe we can see the patterns of truths. Whenever we see them, we can validate as to whether that is very true. We have patterns of truth somewhere. Yes, I can see this one here, 659,442. So that's why it will get the highlight. Okay, I now confirm that this formula works a little bit fine, 100%. I'll copy, Control Z. I just Control C, X out, and then highlight this invoice list. I want only single out those invoices that have been listed here, and I want them highlighted differently. I'll say conditional format, new rule, use a formula, and paste my all logical test here. Fill color, green, font, white, and bold. I say okay. Okay, one more time, and there you go. You can see these two invoices have been singled out. If I changed this one maybe to something else, I can do 659455. You can see now I'm highlighting this particular record here. I can change this one to something else as well. You can see whatever that particular invoice number is has been highlighted. Feel free to change through and confirm whether your conditional formatting has been configured properly. Okay. Do we have any questions here? Let me go back. I don't think that we have questions. Let us move forward. We want to format cells based on the AND criteria between these two dates. So any date value that falls in between these two date values, if you're between 2nd of Jan and 5th of Jan, we want that particular record highlighted. Which function do we need to write here, please? All right, so let us write this one here and say equals and. Of course, we need the and. We say, is this value C7? Make sure that it's locked. Sorry, column B is locked and row number 7 is able to move. Are you greater than or equals to 2nd of January 2013? We completely lock this one. And again, we say, are you F4 on the keyboard a number of times? Are you less than or equals to 5th of Jan 2013? But because we have used the and, all these two questions must turn out to be true. I believe this should be able to work for us. I'll say enter. We get a true. Let us double check. 5th Jan. Are you within? Of course, you are within. 10th Jan. Let us drag this to the side and confirm. I'll drag this down like so. And let us examine the patterns of truths. We shall check here 5th Jan. Yes, of course. How about 10th? 10th, you are far ahead of our criteria, so we expect a false. How about someone's 11th Jan? Yes, we have a pattern of false here. So I believe this formula works a little bit fine. I can copy. I'm very much sure, 100%. And I can just highlight this entire range, conditional formatting, new rule, and then we paste our formula here. You see how these things become a little bit easier if you know how to construct logical formulas or logical questions or logical functions. Let's do this. Font, bold, and white. We cross our fingers. These things are practical. Okay, so this particular invoices have been highlighted, and we can double check if this particular date range is exactly what is being evaluated. Okay, this is our next hurdle. We have the same invoices here, and what we want you to do is to make sure that we highlight all invoice numbers that you're seeing here in this table. All of them should get highlighted. Of course, we have done this a few minutes back. Let me just confirm. We have done this using the all criteria here, but this time we want you to use another function. Of course, it will become a little bit hard if this particular list grows, because you're going to be opening so many all logical questions here. These are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. I can just highlight. These are around 7. So you'll need 7 all logical tests, which will become a little bit cumbersome in case the list of unique values that you want to test grows. So we use the match function there. We can use the match function. How does the match function work? Have you used the match function before? Let's try this. I'll say equals, and then I open the match function. I'll be looking up for this particular value. Where am I looking it up from? I'm looking it up from this entire array. And the match type, I'm interested in the exact match. I say 0 and close the match function from here. When I hit enter key, if it doesn't find a match, it has looked at this particular record, searched it from here. If it doesn't find a match, then it returns #NA. Remember, we said that formatting will not apply if you get an error. If you get a false, a 0, and an error, the format will not work. Remember, from where I started from, in my presentation, I did talk about that. Any non-zero number. Let me just display what I'm talking about here. So we said the false or 0 or error will not apply the format. True or any non-zero number will apply the format. Now, when we come over to the match function that we have written here, for it will return a #NA error because it has looked for this value. it couldn't find it in this list. That means there will be no format. Let us drag to the sides and check. But before I do the dragging, I need to check, is my column D completely locked? Let me just put dollar symbol here and enter. I know this is a table, so it's already absolute. I will make sure that I highlight down like so and see, do I have where I'm getting a number returned? Yes, of course. You can see for this particular record, the match function has checked through this list and it found it in the first position. Is that true? We can confirm. 659444, it's the exact number one record here. So that's why it's giving us a 1. And remember, we said a 1 will always get a format because true is either any non-zero number. Any non-zero number returned will allow the format to apply. But any error, I believe you understand what I'm referring to. Okay, so you can see our match function will be able to do this for us a little bit faster. Now I can copy this particular formula, copy, and I'll highlight this entire invoice list, conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula, and I'll paste my match function here. And let's use or pick our format. I'll go with the green, bold, and the font white and say okay. Okay, one more time. Oh, this one is not working. Why? Because of the table that we used. So let me just close this one out, come back to this table. Maybe I can go to file menu and go to more options here. Turn off the get pivot data formula and see if this will work. I'll turn these ones off for a moment and I write this one more time. I'll change this part of the lookup array and highlight this range and say, okay, sometimes it may not work due to that table format, but let us double check if this one will work. I'll copy the match function, highlight this entire invoice table, conditional formatting new rule, use a formula, and let us paste our match function here. Fill color green, font color white, and bold. Say okay. Say okay one more time. And there you go. You can see wherever there is a number, this particular record has been highlighted. Wherever there is a number, this particular record has been highlighted. And wherever there is an error, the format has not been applied. We shall again complicate this. You can see the number of scenarios that we have not looked at. But again, this could be your own kind of, practice that you can go through over the weekend and try to, format these things on your own. I believe that will give you comfort and you will be able to master. All right. So if you do not have any questions, I'm tempted to end the session from here and hope to meet with you people. For the people who are in our training course, I will be meeting you on Monday. And for those who will be waiting for us next Friday, see you then. Bye-bye.